Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. I am the new and improved Daniel Rowe for those following the timetable. Not as charming, though, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm here in Sydney, Australia, and it is 6:30 a.m. I've been awake all night watching the talks, cleaning up my own talk. So excited to present it. And yeah, we'll get stuck into it. So, supercharged head management, what is that all about? This is about the vueuse head v1 release and about the future of SEO with Nuxt 3. Apologies to anyone also following the timetable, as my talk title is quite different. There will be some tips in the end for you though. So yeah, let's jump in. About me. Yep, open source dev, do a bit of freelancing as well. Part of the vueuse team, Windy CSS, Nuxt Insider, contribute a little bit to the Vite ecosystem, and maybe you've used some of my modules. So let's begin with a question. In Nuxt, what do these have in common? So if you use Nuxt 2, you probably would have seen this meta info, HTML metadata, meta tags, head tags. Well, they're all the same actually. And what they're describing is managing machine readable elements and attributes outside the Vue render tree for server-side rendering and the DOM. So what does that look like? Well, we can see here we've got this HTML template and we're just swapping out these variables. For the DOM, we are just creating new elements, setting attributes. So what we're talking about is a single API we can use that manages both of these things at once. Can it be named better? I stole this meme, which I think sums up my opinion quite well. So yeah, probably, but it's good enough. We're going to call it, it's called use head. So we're calling this head tag management. So in Nuxt 2, we use Vue meta. This was through the options API. You had your head there, and this was built by the Nuxt team. And for whatever reason, it didn't make the cut for Nuxt 3. Possibly because it didn't support composition. So yeah, Nuxt 3, we have the vueuse head, which, yeah, you'd probably have seen this. It's this use head composable. It was initially built by Egoist in the vueuse ecosystem, and it supports composition API out of the box, and Nuxt specifically has built a way to use it with the options API as well. So what does a vueuse composable mean? So for those who haven't had a chance to play around with vueuse, you're definitely missing out. But some kind of key concepts are we can pass it any sort of reactive data and it should kind of respond to it. So in this example, we're going to pass in a ref of a title and then we change the title. So we expect the title to be updated. We also expect side effects to be automatically cleaned up for us. That is, if we need something that runs on the before our mount, it's done for us. We don't need to worry about it. So the use head composable, you know, it goes with these two rules here. Just a quick tip. While we're in the vueuse space, avoid wrapping in watches. I've seen a few examples of this. And because what I just mentioned, that we're creating these lifecycle events and we're creating these side effects, we want to just run this function once with the reactive data. So what's been going on with vueuse head? It's got a new maintainer, it's me. I fixed a couple of bugs, I did some triage, and I really like the package. So I asked Anthony to take over as maintainer, and he happily obliged. So yep, I got to work after that. we sorted out some initial enhancements. The first one being a fully typed use head. So to accomplish this, I created the package Z, and it's basically a community shared way of kind of writing out all these types. And the goal wasn't just on this strict typing, it was on the developer experience as well as providing auto completions for commonly inputted data. So within this GIF, you can see like the rel, like this stuff is actually just strings technically, but we provide the auto completes just to kind of help the user out. And reactive getter support. So within vueuse version 9, there was this migration to using computed getters over computed. Personally, I love these. They're so much better than just using computed, wrapping everything in computed. And there are some performance considerations with using computed over reactive getter. So definitely try and use the syntax if you're not using it already with the vueuse composables and with the use head. So yeah, I've sorted out those two things, but there are still some issues to solve. There's a lot of issues in the repo around how intuitive it actually was, which I wanted to solve, and the DOM patching algorithm. It was quite slow, and it polluted the DOM with state. So you can see in this code example, this is the kind of state that would be injected into the HTML, and this was used to determine what needed to be done. So for example, this meta head count, this was always placed at the very end of all your tags, and it would kind of go up the number there, 29, and just kind of diff and delete anything that it needed to. So obviously, if something kind of snuck in there, it would get deleted. It was accident prone, basically. Yeah, so vueuse head version 1. I started on a V1 because I wanted to solve these issues. And yeah, let's go into what's new. I'm getting some good early sunrise hitting my face and kind of blinding me. All right, handling duplicates. So if you've ever had to deal with like OG image, maybe OG locale alternate, you would have had to use these keys to basically say, hey, don't remove this other value. They're pretty annoying, honestly. In Nuxt 2, they were called HID. In Vue Meta, they're called VMID. Vueuse head V1, they all do the same thing, but I'd recommend just using key. And what's changed here is that intuitively, we know if you're using use head and you've put in duplicate tags that they should just work. So that just works now. But we also have array support. So, if you just want to get rid of this boilerplate of having to write out all these tags every single time, just use an array and it will kind of, it'll just break it up into separate tags for you. Class attributes. So this was a good one, I reckon. Previously, you could just provide a string, but now we have this object support, which is going to look very familiar to you Vue devs. It's basically the key is the class, and the value is the toggle whether it should be displayed or not displayed. So dark mode, that's a good example for this one, and you can actually see the reactive getters there being put to good work. So that'd be a very easy way to manage kind of this global state of is dark mode on. And yeah, we also support arrays now instead of just the string. Attribute merging. This was a kind of funny one where if you set like HTML attributes or body attributes within like a app view file, if you were to set them again anywhere else, it would kind of get wiped out. All we do now is that we just merge it in. This makes life a bit easier. And yeah, we have these new tag props, like not super exciting stuff, but can come in handy. So you can specify where you want your tag. Previously, you would only have body true, but now you can put it in the open body, the body close, or yeah, the head, which is the default. Tag priority, this is important for kind of moving around important scripts. So there's these aliases for kind of where things should be placed. A critical alias is going to be like right at the top. And yeah, we have tag duplicate strategy. This one's a bit more complex. Basically, when a duplicate tag is found, you can tell it to merge the data instead of completely replacing it. So in this example, any other script tag which was using special script as the key name would get this data through attribute. Prop promises. So we're starting to get into some kind of interesting stuff here. So you can just pass in a promise to any of the fields within usehead, and it will be resolved as the DOM render or the server-side render occurs. So this example I have here is making an API request, but we don't necessarily want to block the page while this request is going on. So we can just pass the promise to usehead, and when we're actually rendering all our tags, it'll make sure that HTTP request is resolved. This one I really like as well, DOM event handlers. So this is like old school JavaScript stuff. Putting your JavaScript straight on these like onload attributes. And yeah, it just works. So you can provide a function and do whatever you want when that function is executed. So for example, the top code there, when the Stripe script would load, we're going to set this ref to true. And yeah, this also extends to any events that you might put on the window. The NDN spec basically says that, yeah, you can put them on body as well, but we'll bubble it up. So yeah, you pretty much have access to most of the events. And you might ask why you would do it through usehead instead of doing it through, just manually writing it out. And convenience, basically, it will handle the lifecycle events for you. So it will remove the event listener on the dismount. And obviously, we can't do anything with this when we server-side render. So these just get thrown out, basically. So it's just a nice and easy way to set this up if you need something simple. So yeah, this DOM patching algorithm problem, how do we solve this? It was a bit of a tricky one. So I made a new package. It's called Unhead, and it is universal head management. And it's now powering vueuse head v1, and it is part of the Vue.js ecosystem as of today. So yeah, it basically just tracks your side effects to avoid this aggressive removal of tags. And because of that, we don't need to deal with this state in the DOM. So it's a bit cleaner. And boom, much faster. For my personal site, it was like 10 milliseconds less CPU time in rendering my tags. So yeah, I was pretty happy with that. And this is powered by Hookable. So this is the same hook system that Nuxt uses. You have it inside your Nuxt app instance within the Nuxt core instance itself. It's very powerful and kind of lets you do anything you want with it. So let's put some of this like new stuff we can do with this new engine. So server only tags is it's an easy one. So we can start rendering tags that would only render on the server, such as imports to like asset URLs. So you might have accidentally within Nuxt 3 being like, okay, I want my file from the assets folder, to find out it doesn't work and you have to move it to the public folder. Through this, we can start fixing that problem. Yeah, and this is moving towards having the ability to have no runtime overhead to render tags. And yeah, official Nuxt support is coming soon. You can use it right now with a direct import. But yeah, if you don't need it essentially, then probably wait till the official support and documentation. What about making SEO easy? That's like my whole initial talk, right? So what can we do? We have use SEO meta. So you've probably seen variations of this, kind of having this flat meta structure that you can just throw everything in and it just kind of works. But yeah, I spent quite a bit of time mapping everything out, and I can promise you I've mapped out everything more than anyone else. And we also have support for like these nested objects. So like viewport in this instance, you can just provide an object and it will automatically unpack all this data for you. And this is intended to be tree shaken from the client build. So similar to use server tags, we can just get rid of this, because this is once like robots hit your site and take this data, we don't really need to do anything with it anymore. And yeah, official Nuxt support still coming soon. You can again use it. You can just import directly from vueuse head. This is kind of like an example of hacking into the core. So through this hook system, we can just throw like plugins at it. And there's this example plugin I've made called Infer SEO Meta plugin. And essentially it will just figure out, if you put a title or description, you're going to want to put an OG title in there, OG description. But also adds like this intelligent robots line and the Twitter card. Useful stuff. And it also lets you kind of augment, maybe you want your OG titles to be slightly different than your regular titles. It's just a very generic way to kind of handle that logic, which you might have seen elsewhere. How can you use this right now? Yeah, I have this package. It was previously called Nuxt Hedge, but now called Nuxt Unhead. I will basically be throwing experimental stuff in here that will make managing SEO stuff easier and managing your head. So at the moment, it automatically exports these composables I've talked about, but it also strips them from the client build for you, so you can start experimenting with that and kind of get the performance improvement from not throwing in scripts that aren't needed. It has augmented types for your files, so it will basically every file you have in your assets folder or public folder, you'll get auto completions for. And yeah, finally, assets with aliases, they just work. So we can determine with this new logic that if you have an alias in front of it, then we use a Vite import to pull in the actual URL. What's next? Yeah, I really want to work towards this 0 KB runtime. So if you don't use head in your app, then it shouldn't load any of these scripts. You can still get server rendered tags. You just won't get that front end reactivity, but you also save about 5 kilobytes of scripts. So that's a win in my books. And yeah, I'll need to send a bunch of Nuxt PRs to get all this stuff across. For people who came from my original title, I've thrown in something for you. Really simple, basic thing to go through. If you're trying to get more SEO juice out of your site, Nuxt server components are going to be your best friend. Stop hydrating things on the client side. Nuxt Fontaine by Daniel. That'll massively help with your cumulative layout issues. Party Town, Critters, like all good stuff. Lighthouse is a package I built that can like scan every page on your website and give you a Lighthouse report for it. So to fix not only SEO issues, but also accessibility issues. I also have the Nuxt Schema org package if you want to look into implementing that on your site. And yeah, maybe I've got some other stuff in the works. You never know, but I'm pretty focused on this kind of overarching SEO world at the moment. And yeah, that's it. I'm sorry I don't have time for a demo, but please check out that module if you want to give it a spin, try this stuff out. Special thanks to the guys, Anthony, Nuxt team, Daniel, Pinia. And yeah, you can learn more at the docs. And I'll post all this stuff up.
Yay, Harlan, thank you. All right, next up, do these meta tags have to be rendered server side, or will crawlers still find them when they're rendered on the client?
Yeah, so definitely rendering them on the server side is the safe option. However, Google has come out and said, hey, we're going to run your JavaScript, so it might be fine. However, would highly recommend just server rendering them. There's no reason not to, unless you have a single page application. However, in those instances, Nuxt 3 will now read your head config anyway and throw that in the SBA HTML template. So yeah, definitely server side is where this stuff should live.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next, can someone use head within a custom composable?
It's a good question. So actually, you can use head anywhere, at least from what I've tested. It's kind of like Pinia. It kind of has this global state that it can reference rather than relying on the specific Vue setup state. So if you want to use it in a middleware, that's fine. If you want to use it in a custom composable, go for it. If you have any issues with it, just make an issue on the Nuxt repo or vueuse head, and I'm happy to look into it.
Great, thank you. And up next, when would you choose to link CSS via usehead versus the CSS option in the nuxt.config?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. There are a few things that is going on with that CSS property. I believe there's like some optimizations done around inlining it to the server render. So if you were to use head, it would be a link, right? When you actually load the page, you're going to have to make the API the HTTP request for the style sheet, whereas Nuxt CSS option is potentially just going to inline it for you into your HTML document. I haven't done a deep dive on that in a while, so I could be wrong, but stick to CSS option at the moment, unless if you need some sort of async script, like it's not essential for your app, then it's probably fine to use head for it.
Great, thank you. And since Nuxt has an automatic route based on the files inside of the pages folder, wondering how to manage it when they only have a template and there is only one page as the routes come from the server/API.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've actually got this on my personal site because I'm using Nuxt content and you just have like the one dynamic route. So yeah, the whole point of use head being this vueuse composable is that the data you can give it can be reactive, and it will react to that reactivity basically. So I would have liked to have a code example in there, but I didn't have one. But essentially, just throw it in that one page file, use the page that you're pulling in from the server API, make sure you're using the reactive getter syntax, and it should just work.
Wonderful. And so what I'm hearing from that is go follow Harlan, so that way you can see more of this over time. And
yeah, of course.
Second from last question, are these examples for SSR only? Do we need something different for SSG, static generation?
So yeah, the answer would be no. Exactly the same, because SSG is essentially server-side rendered. It's just kind of pre-rendered everything out for you. So yeah, nothing to do there that I'm aware of, and through my testing.
Great. And last question, what are you grateful for?
Yeah, I'd say the Vue/Nuxt community. But really, yeah, the Nuxt community is great. I think they're very nurturing for developers who are looking to get into open source, looking to create a module. They have all this boilerplate already there for you to get started really quick. And the core guys are really supportive of giving you feedback and yeah, making you a better dev. It's good.
I love this. Yay. Thank you, Harlan. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.